Welcome. You are watching Sadie Sharp from the Sharp Shares series, the weekly video blog talking about everything that makes us who we are as human beings. So everything from life, work, charity, education, and everything in between. Now, this week's episode is around post-COVID life, in essence, because there will be more of a post-COVID and just normal life at some point. But right now, COVID is on most people's minds. Now, when the whole lockdown thing hit in, I think it affected so many different people in different ways, myself included. And certainly for the first 3 weeks, it sent me into a complete spin and it really knocked me off kilter. And I think it was the first time in a very long time that I'd realized that something can actually knock me off path as such. So after the initial sort of 3 weeks of, oh my God, panic, where's the money going to come from? My brain doesn't work. I can't be bothered to get dressed in the morning and all those sorts of things. I then started adjusting. It took 3 weeks, but I started adjusting and then started thinking, actually, you know what, there might be some opportunities in this, and took the opportunity of slowing down for a little while to reassess what I wanted to be doing. Not to use the overused word around pivoting, but then saying, actually, if I can reassess what I was doing, do I still want to do it or do I want to do something differently? And actually taking that point of reflection and using the being knocked off my kilter as a reflection point actually has made my business and my not-for-profit really in a position where they're due to grow and thrive significantly over this next year, which got me thinking. This is a journey. Going through anything that's a challenge is a journey, and how we cope in those journeys very much varies from one person to the next. So I heard an analogy about a week or so ago that actually this is a bit like us sailing in a storm. And although we've all got boats in that storm, some have got bigger boats than others, some have got much smaller boats than others, and some people are just much more prone to getting seasick than others. So how we deal with those journeys often impacts upon the experiences that we have and what we do with it. So I wanted to have a chat with somebody who I met a couple of years ago, and we've worked quite closely over these last couple of years on a number of different projects. A gentleman called Kevin WIlkinson, who is actually the founder of what's called the New Dawn Group and a group called the Living Full Project. Now, Kevin is all about personal journeys, self-discovery, and reassessing what's really important in life, and then figuring out how the hell you go about getting those things and pivoting your own journey. So I wanted to bring Kevin in this week to talk about his experiences of the COVID, journey, what it's meant to him, and any observations from a personal consciousness perspective that he can maybe bring to us that we could use to leverage and maybe pivot our own journey. So, hi, Kevin. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Hi, Sadie. Thank you for having me on.
It's quite all right.
Great. Yes.
So you're at home like everybody else?
Yes, I am.
Yes,
yeah.
Although I did just see a second ago you had your cleaning lady there as well.
Yeah,
So it's nice to see you living the life, Kevin.
Yeah. She's upstairs.
Right. So, Kevin, I obviously know your background, but for those people who maybe haven't come across any of your stuff online, could you introduce yourself, explain a little bit about what you do, and how on earth you came to be involved in all of this personal development and growth stuff?
Okay, so at my core, I have an entrepreneurial background and spirit, and I've always had different businesses. And it took me losing a business, and my focus was different when I was a lot younger. It took me losing that business and going into a bit of depression to seek out some sort of help. You know, it was a really chaotic time, actually. So I sought out some help from a guy who was a hypnotherapist, a coach, and he also did CBT. And it soon became apparent. I started getting my confidence back and working out what my values were and what was actually important to me. And it gave me the insight to thinking how I now need to build my businesses rather than doing it just for literal financial gain. Is there a bit of purpose towards what I'm going to be doing, you know? Who am I impacting and why, you know? So I remember saying in one of our sessions, I want to do what you do. So that kind of set me on this path of personal development, and just listen to, you know, at the time they were like your Tony Robbins, your Deepak Chopras, all the greats, all the sort of the legends in that sort of field. And that led me down a path of coaching, NLP, hypnotherapy, mindfulness practicing, meditation, loads of spiritual practices. And that's the sort of stuff I still do now as far as qualifications are concerned. And then I've had my own I have my own sort of practice off the back of that, and still run other businesses as well. But primarily my passion and my main area of focus is now the personal development field, and how that looks is one-on-one coaching, workshops, retreats, online seminars, everything. So yeah.
Yeah, so Kevin does an awful lot with lots of different people. And actually, one of the big things that I did with Kevin was about 2 years ago, one of your Bali retreats. And it was interesting because it was definitely an experience. I can't really say much more about it, just because I still struggle now to put into words what it actually did for me. But at that point in my life, it was certainly around, I think, helping me understand my full self, but then also having the courage to put that into black and white words. And that was essentially where I wrote my book. Now, one of the things that I think I probably stumbled across in my book was that actually we all experience things differently. And I think one of the conversations you and I have had is around your mindset and how you maybe take some of those challenging experiences in life and you almost like leverage it as a bit of a platform for growth. So as much as it's absolutely painful, it's trying to take yourself out of that and look back upon it and then say, well, what can I take from it? How has it affected me? How do I want it to affect me? Because you don't have to accept everything. But also I think it's around how you kind of, and certainly for me, how I navigated the emotional turmoil of things that happen. And I think emotional turmoil can come at us in lots of different ways, right? Either on a personal level or on a national pandemic level. And it seems like so many people are struggling in the way that they are experiencing the sort of the COVID-19 situation. And I guess it'd be really interesting, particularly for me, what made me realize was normally a hurricane will not throw me off path. Like I am on it and I know where I'm going and what I want to be doing. And for me, as soon as the whole lockdown and the COVID thing came in, I was like, all of a sudden, like my north had disappeared because you can't control anything. Like the rug has literally just been pulled out from under your feet. And I thought, if that was me and I struggled and I had no motivation, then it makes me wonder, actually, a lot of people who maybe do struggle with change and things generally, rather than embracing it like I do for the sake of change, it must have been really challenging. So I guess, what has been your experience of maybe some of the challenges and the difficulties that have maybe come your way as part of the sort of the COVID-19 situation, either personally or any of those kind of observations you've got of the people who are around you, maybe people you're working with?
Sure, yeah. I mean, before we do that, I think there's something I wanted to raise on what you just said as well. I think there's I'm not sure if you've heard of the hero. Have you heard of the hero's journey? You've heard of the hero's journey, right? So just for the audience sake, if you imagine a clock face, we always have this thing about change. Sometimes most of us don't change unless there's been enough pain. So like I said earlier in my introduction, I tasted enough pain to think, no, I knew something had to change. And I saw there was a pattern within me as well. So that needed to, I was always getting ripped off. And that last time when I fell into depression, it was knowing that I was in a point of crisis that actually elevated me to where I am now, or what I'm doing now. So if that hadn't have happened, then we wouldn't even be having this conversation, and I wouldn't have any influence on your book. We wouldn't have been in Bali. So it's not to negate the crisis or the pain that we're in or that we experience at that time in real time. That's very real. However, if we just to quickly talk about the hero's journey, there's a call to adventure, or you're knocked into adventure. Meaning, so if you imagine a clock face at number 12, you start there at number 12, and you're either urged to change, or there's a calling to do so. As you go around the clock face, you might meet other people, mentors, have different insights and things. So that takes you around to sort of say 3 o'clock. The 3 to 6, as you're carrying along this journey, this is where you start facing your demons, your dragons, and slaying people and whatever. So you have to kind of, and it feels like there's a possible chance of death, metaphorically speaking. And it brings you back around to sort of 9 o'clock, and you think that was the final battle, but normally there's another one, which is actually an even deeper one, when it's like literally there is that death. But what they mean by that is it's a metaphor for shedding an old version of yourself. And then you come back round into number 12, into your new world. So it's to stay at 12 is the kind of our comfort zone, and to stay at number 9 and resting on our laurels is also both kind of dangerous places to be. And this is a cycle for life. So when we know, if we're in a crisis point, then we can know then we're around anywhere in between 3 and 6 or 6 and 9. We're in that part of our hero's journey. And that's what will continue to happen in the cycles of life. And you look, when you think of the films out there, everything is built on that premise, on that kind of, Harry Potter, Star Wars, Rocky, all the kind of great films that we love are all based on that type of, set on that premise, using that framework. So if you haven't heard of Joseph Campbell, then I would, The Hero's Journey, I'd really highly recommend that book. So to answer your question, with me, what I've noticed in myself is because of that, I'm like, okay, wait, what's good? There's a lot of chaos going on, and it is, interestingly enough, the macro, what's going on globally, is very much a representation of what's going on within ourselves internally. And what I mean by that is that we're being forced to look, to first of all stop and recognize that the world that we live in isn't really working as well as we think it is, and we've just ignored it. So now we cannot ignore it. So we're forced to stop. We're inside, rather than, and of course you're going to experience that panic and things are going to change and the chaos. If you can remain, for me, the practice was, after having quite a visceral response to it, actually, like a bit down and like, oh God, I can't go anywhere, and just feeling completely flat, and just wondering, and having this sort of the anxiety and panic of like, what am I going to do then? What am I going to do for money? And what am I going to do to survive? Forgetting that everybody's in exactly the same boat. So it forced the introspection, like you said, and the reflection that's needed. And here's the thing: whenever there's a panic, most of us will want to do more in order to try and solve something, when actually the answers are in quiet, in stillness, and just stopping. There's a great saying one of my teachers always says is, don't just stand there, do nothing. And I was just like, what the hell? It took me a while to work out what he meant, man. It always comes, okay, I know I need an answer to this solution. So I'm going to trust that that's going to come. I'm just going to be still and patient and take my mind off it as much as I can, and do whatever you need to do in order to stay calm and relax. So that can be meditation, that can be reading a book or whatever, and just completely take your mind off it and almost be still. Most of us can't do that and sit with ourselves in the quiet, free from distraction. And in the world we're in, our handsets, at the moment, I'm actually enjoying I'm not a social media fast, I've called it. And anything else that takes little bits of my energy, I've created a container to just focus on myself as much as possible, and not really fully knowing what the fruit of that's going to be, but just having faith that after 3 months or so, that something would have been birthed from that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I think it's a couple of things in there just to pick up on. The whole thing around trying to be busy, right? And I mentioned this in my first episode, actually, around post-traumatic growth, and how, when you can't quite just sit with yourself, you get really busy, and you try and busy yourself with fixing other people and doing things and all that sort of stuff. What, again, even for myself, I didn't see it at the time, but I certainly see it now, like those first 3 weeks where I felt like the rug had just been completely pulled out from underneath me. Obviously trying to pivot online and do all of these sorts of things, and then of course, as I do with me, I'm like kind of jumping 10 steps ahead and saying, well, rather than just doing it like as a little bit, let's do it properly, let's go all out and let's make it a new part of the business. So I basically developed a bit of an Amazon problem, and I now have a fully fitted broadcast studio, Kevin, where we can do these things every single day. So, but that for me at the time, I thought it's just me it's me doing something, it's me kind of, pivoting. But actually, if I look back on it and I'm entirely honest with myself, that was my way of coping, because I can't control the outside environment, I can't control what's happening, but I can control buying stuff. And the whole purchasing thing for me was absolutely one of the things I now recognize is almost like a coping mechanism. Other people drink, I shop.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Drinking, eating, there's a couple of weeks I was like, oh my God, I need to like calm down on this food thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. We all have different coping strategies and we don't even recognize. And that's what I mean. If you're not still enough, you won't recognize what's going on,
Yeah, and the other thing that the kind of the COVID situation again did for me, that, as you say, I think everybody gets so busy doing what we're supposed to be doing, or what we perceive ourselves as being supposed to be doing, and we speed up. In jobs, there's more and more work to be doing, and expectations always creep up. Nobody ever comes to you and says, oh, I know, how about you do less and here's more resource, right? It just doesn't happen. The goalposts just keep rising.
Yeah.
And I think we go so much faster and faster and faster, and we, certainly for myself as well, we forget what a normal level of pace and speed is, because we just adjust our expectations of ourselves. And I think it's only when things like COVID and other sort of large events happen that it's almost like it knocks you off autopilot.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you're off autopilot, it's like, oh, okay, where am I? Do I want to be here? Where would I rather be? Which bits of the old normal do I want to keep? Which bits of the new normal do I want to embrace? And you start making conscious choices about what works for you. And I'm certainly in the point now where I'm like, actually, you know what? If I can earn the same money working at home, sat here and not getting dressed from the waist down, then I'm living the dream, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you don't feel like it's possible. That's the thing. At that time, if you're completely distracted, you don't have the time to stop and think what's actually possible. And one of the things that it's great we can start with ourselves and think, what is it that I actually truly want? It's a great time to reflect and think, what is it that's really important to me? And how do I go about getting, not even the how, but what is it that I want? And not even work out like meticulously how you're going to get there. But just putting that into your mind and into your kind of your space and your field, your energy field, you'll start having awareness of things that may be able to drop in. I should speak to this person. I should bring that person, or I need to research this, because you just slightly you shifted your focus ever so slightly to do that. And I think at this point in time as well, it may be beneficial to think, well, what is it how do I want to see the world? What do I want to on a grander scale as well, how do I want to contribute to the world, and the world I want to live in, what does that look like, ideally? And make it up and have fun, be like a child again, if we almost use our imagination, free from, the limiting beliefs of, I can't do that, or how am I meant to do that? That's ridiculous. Forget about it. You wouldn't have thought this time last year, we'd be at the back end of, 3 months of house arrest. So anything is possible, but it doesn't necessarily, and again, I think the reason we love those types of films is that out of adversity comes some great, great change, and the power of human spirit, I think. And that's been shown a lot as well, the stuff we do for the NHS. What else, just connecting with people that we really want to speak to, even though we can't physically do that, we're checking in on people and whatever. And the volunteers and the key workers, and there's so much going on. There's the guys in Italy. I remember seeing images of in Italy, and people are singing across from the balconies, because they had it a lot worse than we did, obviously, as far as literally having to stay in their apartments. So there's a lot to be said for how strong we really are as human beings, and I think if we can take access and take note of that and use that as inspiration for ourselves, because we're a lot stronger than we actually think.
Yeah, and I think the whole kind of term around the new normal, there's obviously going to be massive shifts across the globe, and then obviously a much more local level, like within ourselves. And I think using your phrase, like how you navigate that sort of emotional turmoil and almost like choose your pathway, for want of a better word. I'm not saying it's easy. Obviously, if you are in turmoil, it feels like you're drowning, right? And all you want to do is grasp for air. Whereas actually, if you kind of calm down a little bit more and float for a little while, you think, oh, actually, this isn't so bad. I guess what are your thoughts around some of the key changes or differences or sort of shift in consciousness, those choices that people are making? What do you think may be going to be some of the key changes that we're going to start to see at a personal, local and national level, or even worldwide? Let's go big.
Okay, well, I think worldwide there's a lot of policies. There's a lot of, it's, for me, it's interesting because if you want to talk about the pandemics, then going straight into probably the biggest protest against racism of all time, across the globe. These things aren't, in my mind, my humble opinion, they're not by chance, because let's face it, there was a couple of deaths prior to that, the George Floyd one. So, and that's happened a lot over there in the States. And the way it's been polarized, yes, there's been some crazy stuff going on, but on the whole, the way that the whole world is just like unified and thinking, actually, this is nonsense. Why is one person better than the other? So there's certain things that are now we're being forced to look at on a global level. We're being forced to look at. It's almost like a collective shadow. There's certain things that we do as a human species that are just like, well, no, we can't treat people like that, or we can't. And it's opened a can of worms because we're not just talking about the black and white thing. We're talking about how women are treated. We're talking about child slave labor, and there's a lot of elements within the humanity that just cannot work anymore in order for us to evolve and progress. And I think on the global level, what underpins all of that is there's some sort of call for unity, for us to be, yes, we're different, but we can all still get along, because it's like a relationship. It's like, okay, yeah, we have either side of the things, but we both need to show devotion and intention and time, patience, and energy, and put in to that thing that we hold dear, which is the actual relationship. Which is, so essentially, it's the same thing with the world. We all have a part to play, no matter how small it is, and because otherwise, why would we be here at this point in time? So and by doing that for ourselves, then we do that for the world as well. It's kind of, so we sort our own stuff out, because it's like, okay, well, you don't like a certain type of person, but have you even asked why? And it's having those conversations, or those deep reflections within yourself. So I think we're having there is a shift in consciousness anyway, and I think a lot of us are feeling that, and because we've been forced to reflect and think for ourselves. Most people that I've been working with, or you can just see actually I want something different for myself. That old normal, the need for the old normal, is just a fear of letting. We all fear change. We all, at some degree, none of it. We all fear change, but we are assuming, and we're predisposed that way. We're human beings, so change could mean, in primitive terms, could mean death. The unknown, uncertainty could mean death. But now we're kind of set up. We're not really going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or anything like that anymore. So if we can park that and know that we can somehow be, uncertainty is, yes, you'll have the same visceral response, that little anxious, okay, what's that? You're on hyper alert and you will be triggered or whatever. But it's actually an invitation to call in what it is that you actually want for yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually when you put it in those words, that almost sitting with the uncertainty and recognizing, I have this feeling, I almost have this instinct that feels like it wants to kick in and do something like shop, or kind of work harder or work longer, or take on more financial accountabilities, whatever it might be. I think now that we almost have that enforced quiet time, the enforced, you have to slow down because you don't have a choice, because you can't go anywhere and busy yourself. It opens up that little glimmer of reflective space, right? And I think what is interesting, where I wear a number of different hats with some of the stuff I do with consulting with companies as well. They're obviously from a company corporate perspective talking about, oh God, you know, there's lots of changes we might need to make around kind of structuring and stuff, but also actually there's some opportunities there. You know, if people don't have to come into work, then do we need to have all these big fancy offices and financial, you know, expenditure and stuff? But again, from the other side of that, that concept around, you know, we are in a relationship with, to want of a better word, with everybody who is around us in our stratosphere, right? So the same thing with employers and employees. And I think now what people are starting to do is say, actually, if I can get my job done working from home, working 4 or 5 hours a day rather than 8 or 9 hours a day, and I can pick my kids up from school and have a glass of wine at the end of the day without crying because I feel like I'm not doing a good enough job because I can't physically pedal fast enough. Actually, is it worth what I'm doing to myself while I'm trying to operate at that level? Or actually, is nobody going to put a bloody plaque on the wall at the end of the day? And this is actually much better for me, and my employers are going to have to start recognizing that. So I think there's going to be a big paradigm shift between employees and employers, and starting to say, actually, what I was doing is not healthy and I'm choosing to not do it anymore.
Yeah, you're right there. And I think it's funny because we are literally, we are coming out of the industrial age where it was all about bodies in a space, creating something as a unit to produce some, whatever that thing is. And it could be white collar or blue collar. It doesn't really matter. You're just this cog in a machine that, to create something else. Whereas we are, for me, going back to localize, going down to smaller enterprises, and in trading in between each other. Also, the big corporates. There are a few big corporates that I feel do it quite well, but not many. They still want their employees to come in, sit at their desk, in their little pods, do their work, and then come out. And I think, like you say, that old system really does kind of break down. It's funny because I live out in the Cotswolds, and I've noticed. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and they said that the area, because you're in nature, is actually one of the most buoyant markets in the country at the moment in the UK. So anywhere, people are looking to returning back to nature, simplifying their lives, and actually I need to get out and about a bit more and walk, have some walks and spend time with my family and whatever, and do the same amount of deep work. Let's face it, if you're in, you'll probably know more than me as far as productivity is concerned. If someone's contracted for 8.5, 9 hours a day and they go into work, how many hours of that is actual productivity, And some of that you have to attribute to commuting. I've spent some time in London, and what a nightmare that is. You're there, an hour back, and it's stressful. It's busy, you're full of other people, and you're taking in other people's energy. But what if you immediately take away 2 hours of travel time, and then you've got that person accountable online or somewhere else remotely doing exactly the same job? The probability is you'll probably get more out of them, or better quality of work. So it'll be interesting. I'm not sure how we'd even be able to measure that. I'm not in that position to do that, but it'd be interesting to see just if the quality of work has changed or has increased somewhat, because they don't have that sort of the extra pressures of someone looking out, because it does feel a little like school or something like that. I think that system is, I'm not sure if it's that entirely necessary anymore.
I guess the key point for me, particularly around these sort of painful moments in time, whatever they might be, whether it's at a personal, local, or national, international level, is to look at what's happening, look at the way that you are interacting with that, how you are responding, how you are attaching meaning to that event, how it's affecting you, how you're behaving, what that instinctive uncertainty kind of is trying to get you to do. Do you do it, or do you do something differently? So about making those choices, as you say, about what you want to take from a given situation. But I guess, if given your massive breadth of experience around the whole personal consciousness, reassessing priorities, what do you want out of life, and really trying to grasp this maybe as a personal development moment, and really try and maximize the introspective kind of reflections we can get from this, what kind of questions or reflections or key personal observations do you think maybe people could look out for to really try and surf this uncertain moment and come out with a new reality and a new dawn, rather than just waiting to go back to the old normal?
Okay, yeah, sure. I think one of the first things to know is that you're, regardless of whether you think you are or you're not, you're constantly creating. So therefore, if you're constantly creating your reality, then would it not pay then to have some sort of awareness of it, of what it is that you're creating? And that's what it is. That's the first point. That's what it's taken us, given us a bit more control, or yeah, control, access to what. Wow, hang on. This is my reality looks like this because I've done this, this, and this. Because if you can reflect, so stillness is a massive one, and knowing that you are in charge of creating your reality, even if you don't do anything, that is still a choice. Yeah. So inaction is still an action. So one of my key questions is always, what is this moment teaching me? What is this experience teaching me? And when you feel the uncertainty within yourself, how might it's okay to know that it's okay, and then how can I use this experience to create something that I want, or create something that I'd love to create? Because everything is still an opportunity to create something that you want to create. Even if it feels like a bad experience at that time, if someone is teaching, or someone's giving you some grief or whatever, that person's in your reality for something. There's something that you can take from it. I wholeheartedly believe that, regardless of the kind of the negative, what we call negative feelings are, the visceral responses are like, oh, I don't like that feeling. It's because we've been programmed not to like it, necessarily. So if you could, for instance, that feeling of fear is exactly the same chemistry as excitement. So it's exactly the same. It's just that we see it, our brain makes it something else. Yeah.
And I guess both fear and excitement have a certain element of uncertainty to them, right? Because you don't quite know what's going to happen. That's where you get the thrill factor from, right? Okay. So if we were going to try and boil some of these kind of key reflections down, what kind of practical things can people maybe do to really try and leverage this as an opportunity and move forward rather than backwards?
Okay, I think the key thing here, I think I'm probably just going to stop with this, because I can't really think of any other way, really, because most of us are always in our minds, and actually it's our bodies which we want to be in, predominantly the heart. So what I mean by that is that we assume that our minds run the show, when actually it doesn't. It's a computer. The main piece is the body, the gut and the heart in particular. So by stopping first of all, and breathing deep into the belly. Most of us don't take deep focused breaths. We normally breathe from here. So it's quite shallow, and you start to fill your body with more oxygen. And you're just doing that for 2 to 3 minutes every day. And then you can extend that for as long as you possible. My practice at the moment has been to try and do it for 60 minutes. And I'll be honest, I can't. It's like, because it feels to me, all sorts will go on. But so just try it for as long as you possibly can. Just focusing on your breath. Lie deep in, so your belly comes out and then retracts. But that a moment of focus, you'll notice that you'll take anything that's going on in your mind will soon drop in, just disappear. And all of your wisdom, you start to then, rather than think about things, you'll get and trying to find wisdom from the mind, you'll get wisdom from the heart, which is essentially a feeling, is what you're looking for. So you'll get a feeling or a sense or an impulse, which are all visceral types of wisdom, as opposed to trying to work things out mentally. And then that's where that kind of, they call it heart and mind coherence, but that's where you're using your whole system to create answers, to create wisdom, to create the, you know, something that actually that you want to create. Or, and some of it might be just coping with something. So it's just, again, if you're listening to your entire body, it will tell you what to do. You need to rest, go and lie down, or think about, or get up and move. You need to do some, I need some exercise. I know I'm stagnant, I'm stale. Well, any of those types of things, and is fundamentally simple as that is, that then gives you access to a greater depth of like insight and knowledge or inspiration or whatever. That's what we're actually looking for.
That's really interesting, actually, because probably about 3 years ago, I did some generative coaching with a lady called Sarah James Wright, and she was very much, her key phrase was, it's like thinking from the neck down, and not going down any other kind of like analogies or anything like that. Yeah. But what she was saying is actually, you know what, this is instinct, this is life, this is cognitive rationale, this is conscious choice, which is fine. But sometimes what happens up here almost becomes at odds with what's happening down here. And I think I was very much in that space because I was on a pathway. I had a plan. I knew what I was doing to control and deliver that plan and designing my world around it and all these sorts of things. And that was absolutely fine. What was interesting is sometimes I was kind of going off. Well, I thought I was on track because that was my plan. I was on track with my plan, but actually my plan kind of went off kilter from what I actually was passionate about, what I had an instinct and a purpose and a passion to deliver. And I was doing really, really well within business. I was hugely successful, but I didn't love it. And I did it to the point where I felt trapped because I wasn't listening to my full self. It was just my head and what my head decided was the right thing to do at that point. And it is amazing. And once those two kind of almost spheres of thinking, they start to align, how much more, I guess, content I felt, because I thought, well, I might be over here and I want to be here, but I recognize that now. That was the first step. And then to start to sort of pivot and move back into the line that you want. But I think the other thing that I certainly recognized from making that shift was I didn't feel quite so emotionally stressed. It was like it took a lot of effort to operate just from my head. It was almost like if I then recognize there is more to it than just that logical thought, actually you almost kind of accept your fuller self without sounding sort of too fluffy. I just feel an awful lot more like I fit in my own skin now because I recognize there is more to life than just what happens in your brain. And it made a massive difference. And it probably is, I genuinely think, one of the biggest reasons that let me write my book, because I think I was holding too much back to be able to do that. And as you say, had it not been for that, I wouldn't be speaking to people, I wouldn't be doing the development courses now, I certainly wouldn't be doing this blog, and I most likely wouldn't have managed to sort of design my way out of the corporate world. So, you know, I'm grateful. It was painful, but I'm grateful for that kind of realignment as such. But it was bloody painful. You know, realizing what I was doing and who I was no longer served me, and I didn't want to be that person anymore. And you almost feel grief, you feel loss, because it's like you're saying goodbye to who you used to be, but now who the bloody hell do I want to be? That's my new self. But that was that uncertainty. That was the visceral, I don't quite know, but I need to sit here in order to make that journey.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes the medicine tastes bad, right? And it will take, and your body's always communicating to you. So if you're like, all right, you're not going to stop, we call it burnout. Yeah, but essentially as your body's shutting down, you say, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me, and we're heading for a disaster here. And then it will do something, literally shut you down in the form of disease, some sort of panic attacks, anything like that, because you've disregarded the relationship with the body. It's really important to sort of get into body and recognize the energy in it. So another basic thing would be any type of practice that incorporates the body energy-wise and breath-wise. So yoga, qigong, things like that, and incorporate the full body. Really, really useful, really beneficial. It feels like you're not doing much, but you're doing plenty. Yeah, and like you said, to create from a space of inner peace is actually your optimum level from where you want to be from. Because if you're anxious and whatever, and you're still trying to create from that space, you're just going to create something more to be more anxious about.
Yeah.
So don't even start to think about creating anything if you're feeling anxious. The first thing is to relax and get centered. And I know it sounds woo-woo and fluffy, but it is. Drop into your body and all that kind of that jargon, as woo-woo as it sounds, is actually that's your starting point.
So kind of asking yourself those questions around kind of who am I really? Like what do I really want? What makes me happy versus actually what makes me feel that little bit of discomfort, and do I really want to be doing this?
Yeah.
So really questioning what have I been doing and how much of that serves me, how much do I want to keep, versus maybe if I could design my ideal kind of what would I love to be doing, what would I like my future to look like, and then maybe sitting in that space and saying, well, if I could drop that stuff, as much as that feels really uncomfortable, how would I maybe do that? But then start to question, how, I guess, who am I and what do I actually want? And you have to be still to be doing that.
Sure. The other thing I would say about creating something, when you decide that you want to go for something, it's inevitable. Yes, you may feel good about it or whether that's great, but it should also cause a little bit of tension within you, which is fine, because that tension we need actually a healthy amount of tension we actually need in order to keep us going along. It's when it turns into anxiety that's the sort of this dysfunctional side of the experiencing tension. But tension is a good thing, because we don't have all the answers, and you're not supposed to. You're meant to figure you figure it out. It's the journey, which is such a cliche. It's the journey, not the end destination.
Yeah, and that really resonates with me again, because one of the biggest pivots I had about sort of 3 years ago, as you know, because you've helped me out with certain things, is launching my youth project. And I very much didn't have a frigging clue what I was doing, how I was going to do it. I knew I wanted to do something that looked roughly like this, but I had no idea how to get there. I think one phrase that still sticks with me now is actually, you don't need to see the whole journey just to take the first steps. So sitting in that sort of visceral, I don't know, it's a bit like a wild horse ride, and I feel like I'm making it up as I go along, and I'm a bit of an imposter. Do I really deserve this? All of that sort of stuff. But it was fulfilling because it was what I really wanted at a very deep level. So you I guess you accept those kind of feelings of discomfort because it's a good discomfort. It's the excitement discomfort rather than the I don't know whether I really want this kind of discomfort.
Yeah. And equally, there's always going to be, because of the world we live in, there's always a law of polarity, pluses and minuses, light and dark, hot and cold, etc. When you get the thing that you want, or you're going after things that you want, it's going to come with a negative aspect to it. But it just means that, so it's to expect that. Because sometimes, this isn't what I expected, otherwise everything should be great now. That's not the case. You're still going to have a negative aspect to the thing that you want.
Yes, yeah, and I think you've said to me, and Tony, our mutual friend, has said as well, you kind of got to recognize in yourself that there is always that balance.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Is saying, okay, well, I've made this choice, but actually it's not all going to be roses and ponies. So if it was good all the time, then actually I probably would have done it ages ago. And even now, even with the youth project, is like I love it 90% of the time, and then 10% of the time when you hit those roadblocks or you overcommit because you commit loads because that's who you are, but then sometimes you go too far and you overcommit, and then it takes a chunk out of you, and you end up coming home and say, what am I doing? I'll just go get a bloody job, it'd be so much easier. But then you get over that and you surf that, and you come back and say, actually, you know what, it's worth it. It's worth those moments of discomfort.
Exactly that.
Good. Okay. So really useful, practical stuff. What I think would be lovely if we could maybe just come back to, so in a nutshell, if people could do 3 things in the next 2 or 3 weeks that can maybe help them take steps forward to manage their post-COVID journey. So we're starting to come out of it now. So rather than maybe just going back to the way things were, what 3 practical things should people look to do now over the next couple of weeks to see whether they can knock themselves out of autopilot?
Okay, yeah. The first thing would be still make time to stop and do nothing. And what I mean by that is literally stop and pause. And it doesn't mean pause knowing full well you've got something going on in straight after an hour, because that's not complete rest. I mean, finding an hour to 2 hours of just complete rest either side, and then being able to come out of that naturally. And whatever happens within those 2 hours happens. Number 2 would be, and if you do that with number 1, in conjunction with number 1, is really trying to connect with your body and your breath. And the reason being is because number 3, the more often you do that, is then you can be sure that you look to create with some intention. So my intention is for this, or my intention is to have that. So even writing it down, there's something about writing some things down of how you want to be, gives it more power, gives it some energy. And then you could even list, so I have the intention of, I don't know, being fitter, or not working as hard, or whatever those things are for you, having those lists so you don't go back into the world and go straight back into autopilot again. I don't think that's possible, but you really don't really want to do that, especially if there's certain things that you now is the opportunity to make those changes. So yeah, the last one is definitely something around writing down that list, and then just taking some time to look at the list, 4 or 5 sentences and intentions, and just connect with those. So you could actually, within that little 2-hour process, you could probably get that done easily. You could probably get that done in half an hour, just by looking at that, just looking at those every day, and not even worrying about how, because something else will just come in. And just have faith in that. Yeah. But you're aligning yourself into that space where you're just like, you're feeling, okay, cool. I'm in my body. I'm present. Yeah.
Okay, good. So those intentions, as you say, don't necessarily have to be specific. This is almost like my commitment to myself. This is what I want. This is what I'd like. I did something similar around, actually, you know what? I don't want to be living out of a suitcase and traveling around hotels after this. I don't know how I'm going to achieve that, and the commercialities and all those sorts of things, but actually that's what I want. That's my goal for myself, very non-specific goal. But actually, as you say, the fact that it's there and you keep coming back to it, and you almost remind yourself that that's your new north. Decisions you make along the way, they kind of start to align with that. And as you say, stuff happens and you're like, oh, look at that. I'm actually halfway there.
So I would definitely say with that as well, I was going to, because it picked up, my coach hat just come on when you said, I don't want. I'm like, oh, it's like nails down a chalkboard, if people know what a chalkboard is. So it's like, it's reframing that positive. So if that's not what is it that you do want? If you don't want to be living out of a suitcase and whatever, I'm assuming you would want what? Well,
yeah. Be working from home and spending most days with my pajamas on from the waist down. That.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin. That's been enlightening as ever. So I don't know whether you've seen any of the previous episodes, but I tend to like to end them on a bit more of a light note to make sure we don't get too serious with life and work and such.
True.
So I've been gifting all of my guests with a swacking question that I got asked on a speed date event once. Best and worst question ever, Kevin. Right, so it means everything about your character now, so be careful how you answer this.
Okay.
If you were a cake or a biscuit of some kind, what type would you be and why?
Oh, wow, okay.
I know. Life-altering question here.
Yeah. I would be... What's the word with the rainbow? It's not rainbow. Is it called a rainbow cake?
Well, the one with all the layers, or the 4 different...
No, not the 4, the ones with different colours.
Yeah, let's call it rainbow cake.
Is it a rainbow cake?
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So that, because there's many layers to what I do.
Nice. Good, okay. And I guess different people might make it down to different layers, Kev?
That's it. They're lucky.
On that note, I think we'll finish. Right, thank you so much, Kevin. It's been an absolute pleasure. This week we were talking about COVID-19 and how maybe you can use it as the opportunity to create yourself a new dawn and a new normal rather than just going back to how it used to be. So you've been watching Sadie Sharp and Kevin Wilkinson on the Sharp Shares blog. We are talking about everything that makes us who we are as human beings, from life, work, education, and everything in between. So thank you very much for watching, and I hopefully will see you next week.
Thank you.